Alright, so I've switched over to the video, turned off the video camera now. And as I showed you, I've run this SMR audio strobe program through magnetic coils that are placed on each side of my forehead with the ridges on the coils facing inwards. That's sending magnetic pulses across my frontal lobes to create an entrainment type signal. Right? So let's see what the result is. So we saw the brain rhythm in our other video that I had targeted as being associated with attention, and it was a compressed brain wave where delta and theta were strongly compressed and gamma and all of that raised up, and it was from 25% to 50%. And that rhythm occurred while I was in training, essentially a training to SMR beta delivered by light glasses, while I had my attention range high. Okay, and I could only do that for like 4 minutes or so, with variations in that wave. And now you start to see the structure of it even more, of what needs to happen. So, with my eyes open, looking at the graph, right, and these magnetic coils on my head feeding SMR beta, again with my eyes open, looking at the graph, so a little bit different conditions of with my eyes closed. I'll do some more tests with that, but I definitely wanted to point out the rhythm to you, that using the coils, see, my brain could take on that rhythm really quickly. And what it does is it grabs beta or delta every once in a while and drops down. So there's a need to relax at a certain point. And I feel it while I'm looking at the screen with my eyes open, doing this session. I felt it as a strong need to blink. I needed to blink at that moment. Now, I was blinking regularly, but for some reason this was a stronger need to blink. And then when I did that, then I would see this delta pop up in this type of pattern. And so that's rather interesting. And you could see that I was able to artificially induce this rhythm. I say artificially, but you know, hey, it's my brain, so it can't be artificial. But I was encouraging or imposing that rhythm with the magnetic stimulation. And as you could see, I pretty much easily broke the 4-minute barrier here, with a strong need at 5 minutes to get a rest. So there is a kind of limitation even when there's an imposition of a frequency. But it picked right back up after that period, and then periodically I would grab this little rest period. And again, it was a strong need to blink, a strong need to just blink for a second. And not really close your eyes, just kind of blink, you know, a pronounced blink. And that happened throughout at periodic intervals. But that brain rhythm was maintained throughout with my eyes open. So let's see how the attention looks. I wasn't focusing on attention. I was really just looking at the graph and holding the coils in place and kind of, you know, amazed of the brain rhythm. But the attention stayed relatively high. Now I was able to have it higher actually yesterday while I was focused on it. I would have triggered the tone a number of times. Maybe it's relatively the same. I would trigger the tone a number of times. Like, let's look at 3.5 minutes or so. Yeah, you could see that I needed that delta rhythm right then. Then I needed another one about just over 3. So that's that one. That's the strong delta rhythm right there. And so there would have been a previous one at about 2.5 minutes right there, right here. And then the first one is right there. So you could see that I could keep the attention high, and then it would drop at a point where I needed a beta reset. Now this attention got really high here. And then throughout the session, it started to drop lower. Let's look at 5 minutes here on this graph. Right. There it is. There's that deep dropping rhythm right here. That is right there. So you could see the rhythm started to break up a little bit. I grabbed another delta here. I needed 2 deltas at 5 minutes right here, and then another one right there. So that a drop in attention is associated with grabbing that delta. 7 minutes, just over. That's it right there. At 8.5 minutes, pretty close. That's it right there. Yeah. So you could see that each drop of attention is me grabbing a bit of delta, and it's really only delta. Let's look back at this again. The theta stays relatively the same. I just need to grab some delta right there. Grab some delta, grab some delta. And it's a strong spike rhythm. However, again, I was imposing this. This rhythm was being imposed by magnetic stimulation and opening my eyes. And watching the graph, you know, those factors all play into each other. But I kept the attention relatively high throughout this session, fatiguing a little bit maybe toward the end, still within the baseline. Again, I wasn't focused on attention. Nothing was happening. There was no numbers playing. I wasn't concentrating on anything except for the graph. I was looking at the graph. That might qualify as something that I'm focused on for attention. But I wasn't trying any attention. I was really just trying to hold the coils, look at the graph, observe the brain rhythm, see what would happen, blink as needed. Then I was going to look at the attention. It wasn't on the screen at the time. I wasn't watching this attention graph at the time. So basically, for myself, at least in preliminary results, I've identified a brain rhythm that is associated with attention for me, okay, from the frontal lobes on the Neurosky device. And tentatively, I figured out how to impose that rhythm with magnetic stimulation. Now, I want you to look at this session because I'm randomly moving throughout an SMR range from 12 to 14. I think that's kind of important because you're stimulating a lot of frequencies in that range. My way of thinking is that if you just have a straight, solid bit of entrainment, then it's easier for your brain to filter that out and not pay it as much attention as it could when you're stimulating all the way within the band and it's moving around constantly. You're picking up all kinds of frequencies in that band. And I'll do a lot more tests to determine the validity of that point of view. I did try 14 beforehand while I was setting up the coils and just testing them. but it was really when I started to do these random changes within the band that I noticed the rhythm most strongly and picked it up and was able to see that, all right, hey, I can actually create this rhythm. So that's pretty darn interesting, but that's just preliminary results, and so we'll be covering it more.